Hey, what's going on, good people? It's your boy James Harris, coming to you with this video on trauma bonding. Oh man, this is probably going to be my most interesting video because a lot of people go through trauma bonds or codependent situations, and they're not really sure how to get up out of them or recognize that they're even in one. So, again, I'm James Harris. I'm founder of a movement called Mental Heal, which focuses on men's overall wellness, their mental health as well as their physical health. Also, the author of Man, Just Express Yourself. Hopefully you can see that. Um, but it's an interactive guide for boys and men to better express themselves. You can definitely get that at Barnes& Noble's, Target, Walmart, Amazon, and of course my website, mentalheal.com. Make sure you like, share, subscribe here. Submit your questions if you have any. I definitely appreciate you. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well because I update videos or upload videos every Tuesday pretty much. But again, this video right here is on trauma bonding. A lot of people are in these situations or have been in these situations or have witnessed these situations. So, and it's so many questions surrounding trauma bonds. And I just want to bring it to you a video highlighting some of the areas in these situations. So trauma bond is, of course, a type of survival strategy that can occur in a relationship. Trauma bonds often come through during periods of intense love and excitement with the person, followed by periods of abuse, whether that's emotional or physical, neglect, and of course mistreatment, all types of mistreatment. Within a relationship, these partners develop a codependency issue with each other. You know, you become loyal to a person who is very destructive. That's part of that abuse. That is part of the manipulation, controlling factors and stuff like that. So the cycles of being devalued and are rewarded over and over works over time to create a strong chemical and hormonal bond between a victim and his or her abuser. So make sure you're not being gaslighted in these situations because oftentimes most people are gaslighted or again in that codependency and don't know how to recognize it. So you want to ensure that you're noticing how the abusive behavior is often always justified and become like a victim blaming situation. So, and in most cases, to be honest with you, the victim tends to blame themselves for the abuse of the abuser giving them the abuse. So they tend to take it on as if it's their fault. In these cases, vulnerability of the trauma bonding often stems from insecurity attachments created during, of course, repeated abuse or traumatic childhood experience with a caregiver that you previously had. So mom and dad probably was created a trauma bond when you were smaller, like a child. Or you have severe attachment issues that you don't know how to recognize it, or you can't, leave as rapidly as you want to. This relationship pattern become eternal as a learned pattern for pretty much a staple on how you navigate your relationships, how you participate in your relationships. The behavior carries into your relationships from a child all the way up until adulthood. You expect that in order to feel love, you must also be abused. But that's not how it works. You definitely should be validated and treated with respect and dignity, not emotional abuse or physical abuse. So that's not love. But of course, if you're in a trauma bond situation and you were raised this way, and now in your adult relationships, that's how you equate, make love and abuse synonymous, which is unfortunate. For example, like if you were an abusive situation growing up, a non-compliant child, you were likely to be left feeling abandoned or unworthy. So now growing up, that's what you feel. So in order to attach to your abuser, you learn that to meet their needs and to make them happy, you could receive love and, you beg for their approval in most situations. If you were abused as a child, you protect your relationship with the abuser, whether that was your parent, you preserve that vision of them. You want to ensure that they're the good parent, you're doing what you got to do to get accepted by them, pushing down their feelings of anger and hurt in order to feel loved, safe, and attached. You protect yourself by burying these feelings, convincing yourself that there must be something wrong with you for you to be upsetting them. So when you were a child, you was like, oh man, it was me. I made my mom mad. I made my dad mad. But now that you're an adult in the relationship, you're like, I'm making my partner mad. Or if I wouldn't have did this, he wouldn't have hit me. Or if I wouldn't did this, she wouldn't have cheated. So we got to change our way of thinking, to be honest with you. because it's not your fault that they are putting you in this situation. You came to blame yourself that it was all your fault. You were very bad. You're naughty. In most cases, you want them to be like you're trying to be good enough to deserve that love. But again, the issue is not you, it's with them. It's something that they have to address within themselves. But in most cases, they're manipulating you to make you feel like it's you, but it's not. This coping mechanism became the template for how you see yourself in relationships as an adult. Again, you got those patterns from when you were a child all the way up until now in your adult relationships. You see yourself as the bad person that deserving a punishment, so you must be good in order to get the love that you want to feel from the parent in that situation, or now your partner in this situation, whether that's your husband or your wife. When you feel as though you're in it good enough, you desire love can be perfect bait for an abusive or narcissist to hook on to. So that narcissistic trait or that narcissistic abuse is often there, based on how you're presenting. If you're unsure what narcissistic trait or narcissistic abuse is, it's definitely a narcissistic video on my YouTube as well. Check it out. You might be enlightened. So when you were meeting all their needs, when you feel love good enough, allow you both to see the abuse as justified. So you are finding ways or making excuses for why they're treating you bad or abusive, whether that's physical or emotional. And you shouldn't do that. As you justify or minimize the abuse and blame yourself for it, you remain in denial about the fact that you are being abused. And we see this all the time in the movies, or we know or we observe other relationships. Like, oh man, why is he or she staying? All they do is argue, all they do is fight. But to them, they're the happiest thing because they are in their codependency and they are in that place of constant to where it's all they know. It's how they grew up. It's how every relationship is. So to them, it's normal. They become numb and desensitized to it. Acknowledging abuse creates a fear of abandonment, awaken your original plan. So, oh man, you found out this person, and now if I change my ways, they may leave me. I may be alone, or who's going to accept me this way? I'm broken, which is not the case. This pushes you further to defend or protect yourself by digging deeper into the denial and self-blame. So you tend to blame yourself a little bit more once you discover that you're being manipulated. You're always trying to make an excuse to justify why you're being treated so badly, which shouldn't be the case. So how can it look? It looks different from each relationship or each person depending on how far you are. But others seem to be disturbed by something that has happened to you or you said to them, and which you're not supposed to in reality, because they want you to keep the information confined within your relationship. You keep having repetitive, damaging fights with the person that nobody's wins. Like, it's over and over, constant bickering back and forth, emotional abuse, potentially physically abuse and stuff like that. Isolation from your friends, families, and coworkers and stuff. And in the relationship, it's so much gaslighting, like apologies, not really leading, believing it. So much in this situations that are bad. So don't understand trauma bonding. They often mistake these powerful feelings of attachment for love. That's the biggest one. Love is not supposed to hurt. Suffering from attachment trauma as a child will generally date people who trigger the same attachment traumas in you as an adult, because you were trying to find ways to heal from your past wounds. You find yourself in deeper and toxic bonds with people about your relationship that might mimic one that you had with a toxic parent or caregiver. So your dad used to yell at you when you was younger, so now in your relationships, if their partner is not yelling at you, you don't think it's love. Or your mom used to spank you for certain things that you didn't do right. So now if your partner don't put their hands on you, you feel that it's not right. So we got to break those cycles. Unfortunately, sadly to say that all parents aren't necessarily good parents, and that could definitely have created this poor trauma bond situation now in your adult relationships. Of course, the abuser will figure out that the victim's vulnerability and weakness and make it a way for him and her to feel safe, beautiful, seen, or whatever they need to feel to have the victim craving the support and nurturing from them, even though they're going to be toxic. So it's doing what they have to do to draw you in and then just rapidly changing over a period of time. to where it's like safe, getting bad, worse. So that can be physical abuse, that can be emotional abuse, that can be having you isolate from your friends, family, and coworkers and stuff like that. And again, you continue to try to justify that behavior knowing that it's wrong. Like you decide to stop hanging out with your girls or your homeboys. You decide to criticize yourself a little bit more. You know what? I am gaining weight, so I understand why he or she talk about me like that. Or I'm not the smartest person in the world, so when they call me dumb, I understand what they mean. So stop trying to justify their actions. It's an issue with them, not with you. So when you are desperate to understand, validated or needed by those who have indicated they do not care about you. So stop trying to accept the validation from them. So listen, it's not too late though. There's definitely ways that you can break the trauma bond. Definitely understand the trauma bond in an abusive relationships, and more you will be able to understand that some people have toxic traits regardless of whether you're with them or not. So definitely do what's best for you, your emotional, your physical, and your mental health safety in those cases. Educate yourself as much as you can on different topics regarding relationships, regarding how you're supposed to be treated, what kind of love you want to accept. Get a therapist. They can help you understand abuse, trauma bonding, attachment trauma, and they can do so many other things. I know in practice for me, it's helpful that I assist my clients in identifying ways to what does healthy love look like to them. So we do different exercises surrounding that. Going to no contact in one of the quickest ways to help break that trauma bond situation. Sometimes you got to relieve yourself from that situation with that person who's abusing you or who's gaslighting you. When you cut off your abuser entirely, you end up, in an up and down cycle that creates a trauma bond in the first place. So again, like it's for the best. Like this person may or may not change, but for you, your health and safety is definitely critical and important. So make sure you're distancing yourself. If you suffer from attachment trauma, you may have a long history of unstable relationships, whether that's your parents or whether that's your adult relationships, your romantic relationships. View healthy relationships. Identify what is a healthy relationship. That's an exercise that I often do with my clients now, whether it's couple counseling or individual counseling, if they're interested in starting back to date. Build self-confidence. Help your brain create new patterns and pathways of what healthy relationships are. Help you stop, obsessing about your abuser while your body and your mind is detoxing from those poor relationships. So while you may feel like lonely after leaving a toxic relationship, it's not good to ideally jump back into a relationship immediately. Some people do that, like relationship to relationship, looking for some positive or looking for what they lost. Work on yourself. Take time to learn yourself over. Take time to build yourself up. Take time to learn how to be vulnerable with yourself, so that way you can be safe. You can understand what you want and not accept certain abuse. You got to affirm yourself. You got to create that confidence within yourself. Use this time of healing to, dive into your childhood or issues that created those childhood wounds that are now presenting in the adult wounds, which means creating those trauma bonds. So you want to identify those things so you can see them when the next partner come. You can already prevent certain things from getting too far. Healing yourself is the best way to protect against falling into another abusive relationship, definitely in the future. So make sure that you are healed as much as possible. And if you don't know what healing is, I'll drop a video on what is healing. So definitely ensure that you like, share, and subscribe so you wouldn't miss that. In most cases, the reasons it feels like that you can't break the traumatic bond cycle is because you suffer from your body adaptation to all the chaos. Like you're used to it. Again, you probably became numb and desensitized to it. So when you're being cussed out, when you're being belittled, when you're being pushed or physically abused, you think it's a part of love when in actuality it's not. The negative energy is now stored within inside you, and you think like this is normal. But of course, the people outside looking in, your friends, your coworkers, like, oh man, like all they do is argue. So those things are unhealthy. Preventing trauma bonds is something that you definitely can do. Always take the time to get to know someone and learn about that past. Like they probably can reveal to you something that will create that red flag and say, no, I don't want to move any further. Or we got those things in common, it might not be the best. So definitely ensure that you're learning somebody else, but most importantly, make sure that you know yourself. Be careful not to jump straight back into a committed relationship because things feel real good and exciting immediately. No, take that time, still learn this person, still learn yourself. Um, and you probably heard the saying that opposites attract, but that might be true. But remember, if you're compatible, you stay together. So opposites can attract, but being compatible, you stay together. That's just something I tell my clients when they tell me that, like, yeah, your opposite. Well, what's the compatibility? What do you have in common? What do you see besides the attraction, besides the physical? Like, what else is there? Like, how can y'all have a conversation beyond just the physical? You have to have more than that. Be sure that your boundaries are respected. If they're not, don't take things any further. You should be validated. You should be respected. You're a person. You have to have firm boundaries that you're not easily moving back and forth because of this person. True love is not abuse. You shouldn't need to jump through hoops in order for somebody to admit they love you or want to have a healthy relationship with them. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you obtain self-love. That's pretty much like one of the most important things that you can do for yourself, which means like letting go or remaining ties to this abusive parent so that you can free yourself from the dysfunction attachment patterns, seeking love and approval from like bad people within your adult relationships. So you can address those things with your parent, or you can just let them go and move on forward in a healthy way. True love means engaging in self-care, protecting yourself from abuse so that you can like feel loved from a real person. Somebody out there is going to love you for who you are and what you have to offer, and not just the negative signs and the things that you have to offer. Not just the abuse, not just the you being hard on yourself or you guys bonding around a specific trauma. So definitely ensure that you like, share, and subscribe. Focus on yourself, take care of yourself, do not accept abuse, whether that's emotional or physical, and be safe. Break these trauma bonds, because if you don't break them, you're creating cycles, which means if you have children, those are potential cycles that they may have to deal with. Again, you deserve to be happy, you deserve to be loved, you deserve to be validated. So do not let somebody abuse you emotionally, physically, or any other thing. Definitely appreciate you guys checking in.